Hi, Kellen Rouse. Um, there we go. So I am here to talk about my third EMDR session today. This time I continue to focus on physical abuse in my childhood. And instead of going through every circumstance that I can remember, um, which isn't helpful and also is difficult because I don't actually remember every single circumstance. It's sort of like I don't know, like a blob of different memories that I have little like bits and pieces of in my brain. I decided to go with one that really sticks out. And that is one that happened when I was 11. And my mom beat me the worst that I've ever been beaten. And I've had back and neck pain ever since. And until I started doing EMDR, I thought that there must be some more physical reason for why I have this pain. I've had my back x-rayed. I have no skeletal issues. There's nothing wrong with my spine, but my muscles are always very, very tight. So we figured it must just be some sort of muscular thing. Maybe there was some sort of scarring. But as I'm going through the EMDR, I'm realizing that actually a lot of that pain is psychosomatic, as is the tension. So again, when I worked on this memory, I had pretty serious body pain that came along with it as I reprocessed the memory. So this particular memory, like I said, was of a beating with a belt. And I'm not going to go into details, but especially for maybe more sensitive people who may be watching. But basically, what happened is I was made to lay down on the bed, and she beat me from my neck to my ankles, and I stopped counting at about the 50th lick. I completely dissociated. I was unable to turn my head for 2 weeks after that, and I've had back and neck pain ever since. So, and also, there was a lot of anger there because I was being punished for something that I didn't do, which made it worse. So, anyways, I processed that. It was, again, this was extremely intense. It was actually more intense than the last one. And I had some memories come back to me. I had some memories about me trying not to cry when it was happening because I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of knowing that she was hurting me. And I think that probably made her go harder, to be honest, because she was a rage monster. But it was after a lot of that pain moved around and came up that crying came out. I started crying a lot. And that's when I had the memory that I had tried to hold back the crying during the actual incident. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I was 11. I was 11 when this happened. So, and I was maybe like 90 pounds wet. I was 5 feet tall, maybe. My mom's like 5'7" and a very large woman, like up to 300 pounds. So anyways, we processed this. It took a full hour and a half to get through it. I had a lot of pain, again, just moving around in my back and neck. I had a little bit of like sound flashback where I could hear the belt. And then I had all of this crying that needed to come up. And then once all of that kind of came through, once again, I saw my younger self. So the first time I saw my much, much younger self, my 6-year-old self, frozen in fear. This time I saw my 11-year-old self unable to sleep. And my 11-year-old self, I mean, again, this of course is all imaginary, but this is how I was able to visualize it. My 11-year-old self had her eyes like wide open and had been unable to sleep since that incident, which is interesting because I have serious problems with sleep and I take medication to sleep and have for years, because I have nightmares and night terrors and panic attacks in my sleep. And I'll wake up multiple times a night if I'm not medicated, and therefore that makes everything else worse, basically, when that happens. When I'm able to sleep, I'm able to not be on antidepressants and mood stabilizers and stuff like that, because the sleep allows my mind to stabilize, I guess. But anyways, I had never really made a connection between that particular attack and my issues with sleep. But when I imagined myself at 11 years old, my 11-year-old self was saying that I'm tired and I want to sleep. I'm tired. I want to sleep, but I'm afraid to sleep. So of course, one of the symptoms of c-ptsd is hypervigilance, which is something that I have in spades, and I have, for as long as I can remember, been hypervigilant, and just, I startle easily. I watch people. I can tell when something's wrong with someone before sometimes even they can tell there's something wrong with them, and people think that I'm just super intuitive, but it's actually that I've trained myself as a coping mechanism to be able to read people well. So I guess that little 11-year-old part of me that had been severely traumatized by that beating has been part of that. And so when I talked to my therapist about that after the session, we were able to debrief for a few minutes. I didn't have a lot of time because it really did take about an hour and a half to clear all of that out. We talked. I talked about how when I finally gave that 11-year-old me permission to sleep, that I saw her sort of dissipate, sort of reabsorb into my body. And she was like, that's really interesting, because what we would call that is reintegration. And so I think I mentioned this in another video, that when you are a trauma survivor, those trauma memories live kind of outside of your general memory. And they're like these little spiky memory balls that are outside of your regular memory, and that affect the way that you are able to function, basically. And so it was interesting that I sort of intuitively or imaginatively, I don't really know, saw my 11-year-old self reabsorb into my body, like close her eyes and reabsorb into my body. And I also, during this time, my visual was the belt that I was being hit with. I also saw that disappear, kind of Infinity War style, like turn into ashes and fall away. So it lost its power over me. I definitely slept a lot yesterday. I still feel groggy today. Yesterday was when I had the appointment. I feel very tired, and I think that there's a part of me that is trying to finally be able to rest. And so I'm just allowing myself, it happens to be a rainy weekend here. I do have some work that I need to do, but I'm just sort of putting that off for right now and allowing myself some time to rest and recuperate. So that, hopefully I can continue to let go of the pain, the physical pain, maybe some of the sleep issues. I'm hoping that as I continue on with this therapy, that I may be able to even see about weaning off of my sleep medication, which is actually an anti-anxiety medication to keep me from having panic attacks when I sleep. So we'll see. But I will keep you updated. I have another session in 2 weeks, and we're going to move from physical abuse to sexual abuse. So I probably will end up doing a couple of sessions to deal with sexual abuse, at least one, because I have one memory that is very spiky and is invasive at times. And I also eventually will be working on birth trauma, and by that I don't mean me being born. I honestly am not sure how much credence I give to people being traumatized by being born, but instead what I need to work through is the experience of me giving birth. And it was extremely traumatic for me to give birth. I was only 18. And I think that a lot of that is tied into the sexual abuse that I had to deal with when I was a preteen and a teenager. So more to come, more fun. I do continue to feel like that this is an extremely effective therapy for me. I've been reading a little bit more about the efficacy of this kind of therapy for people who had childhood onset trauma, and that it is tends to be less effective than people who have had single trauma events as adults that they're working through. It seems to be extremely effective for that. I think it was something like 75 to 80% of people are cured, if you could call it that, of their PTSD after a few sessions. I'm looking at probably upwards of 10 sessions altogether. I'm hoping to get done with them within the year that I started. And then I need to talk to my therapist about what's the best way moving forward for me as far as like continuing to work through these issues and get to, where I want to be, which is an adult woman who is living her best life and not being held back by all these traumatic events that happened a really, 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 really long time ago. So thank you for watching, and again, please leave me questions, comments. I'm happy to address them. Thank you.